Hello, everyone. So nice to see you all here. This is really a nice turnout for Marge Gibson's program. And I think you'll find this a very inspiring program. And just a reminder that what Marge does not come for free, even though they at REGI take care of federally endangered and protected birds. They get no federal money to help with the work that they do. So as you're watching the program tonight, please consider making a donation. The website is Raptor Education Group, all one word, .org. And welcome.
Great, thanks for that. And I'm we're gonna actually share my screen.
Have you ever wondered what to do with an injured animal? Well, over the past 50 years, many people have taken them to the Raptor Education Center, known as REGI, in Antigo, where Marge Gibson has dedicated her life to rehabilitate and send them back into the wild. When COVID struck, many wildlife rehabilitation facilities closed, and REGI was one of the few places that could help injured animals. Marge is the former president of the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council. She teaches wildlife classes internationally and consults with wildlife specialists about avian species. Presently, she has 33 eagles at their facility, and she has over 300 patients. And what happens when she runs out of space in her enclosures? She lets them fly in the hallway of her home. It is now Audubon's pleasure to introduce Marge Gibson, who is founder and director of the Raptor Education Group.
Well, great to see everybody. I'm so happy you're here. And this is Stella. She's a Peregrine Falcon. And as you can hear, she's really happy to see you too. She's been a little verbal tonight, which means she's kind of excited about coming out and meeting everybody. And she's a real beauty.
So maybe
they can see me though, right?
You can see Marge, right? We're seeing Elizabeth is on our screen, and I'm not sure why, but as long as you can see us, I just want to do a check on that.
Yeah.
I'm seeing you and Marge and Stella,
Okay.
for sure.
Okay, yeah. Excellent, very good. Okay, we're going to be seeing some great birds tonight, and we have a few videos too that I hope we're going to play that'll give you an idea of our facility as well. And would love to have y'all come down and do a tour sometime. I think it's hard to get to really see the spirit of everything without being here. Our birds are amazing patients. I'm incredibly honored to be able to work with them. And it's been a lifelong work. So it's brought a huge amount of joy to me. And I always feel like they give me back more than I could possibly give them. But I do know them pretty well, and they're pretty special. This is a Peregrine Falcon. As I mentioned before, I'm going to try to get her a little closer to you. And this is Stella. She is a wild peregrine. She is from the Weston Power Plant. And actually, they have photos of her on the nest, and her chicks, she and her mate were there for about 4 years before she was flying over parts of Weston and was illegally shot and fell onto someone's porch. So she is actually missing one wing. When she fell, her wing was almost completely severed. You can see that this wing is gone. So not only can't she fly, but she only has one wing. Peregrines are very high strung. And in most circles, they feel that if it's an adult peregrine, it will never tame down to be a good education bird. Well, Stella really proved that wrong. She not only did, but she's an excellent, excellent education bird. She went from being a wild peregrine and to, being badly injured. And then almost within a few months to being an education bird. So we're very proud of her. Her mate now has chosen another female. Her name is Rosalie, and she is at the Weston Power Plant. So we don't share that information with Stella very often, but anyway. So you are looking at the fastest animal in the world. They can dive at 240 miles an hour. And they're amazing. Everything about them is designed perfectly. They're aerodynamic, unbelievably. And they have the painting on their face, their feather coloration prevents sunspots in their face. So when they dive so fast, they don't have any problems with shadows and that sort of thing. And this is actually where football players put the black under their eyes. And this is where that came from as well. So she's an excellent education bird. She's been with us now about 8 years and has done really, really well. She has her own mew, which is right by the side of our brand new clinic here. And she's doing really well here. And she loves to teach. If anybody has any questions about her or about, I see we have someone in chat now, we'll check and see, let me know, or we can talk about it in the end. Yes, Sheldon. Yes, Sheldon was her mate, and poor little thing. He did find a new mate after she was no longer there. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any other questions on this particular bird, on Stella today?
Or peregrine falcons?
Or peregrine falcons in general, yep. Do they mate for life is a question that came in.
Well, generally so. And I think that, their mate fidelity is very similar to ours. They can choose to replace a mate. And that sometimes happens, especially if they don't have a fertile pairing. In other words, if the eggs don't hatch repeatedly within 2 years, they tend to replace that mate with one that is productive. And as I like to tell everybody, everything in nature makes sense, and that makes sense as well, because if you're mated and you don't have any babies, which is the prime concern of they're trying to.
Sorry, Stella. I'm making you nervous.
She's like, actually, she's looking at people and wondering where everybody is. She really likes Zoom meetings, so she's like, hey, I thought I'd see people more. But anyway, so but when she was injured, she disappeared. So to him, that meant that she was dead, and it's that's exactly what it was. So he did replace her, and of course she wasn't going back, and that was the proper thing for him to do. So they could be productive and raise baby peregrines, which is what we need.
There's another question. Do you see that there? How are illegal shootings like this investigated?
Well, that's a really good question. The truth is that it's a federal crime. It's not only the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, but in the case of eagles, and we just had actually 2 eagles shot within 24 hours, as well as a great-horned owl in this week. So it happens more than you think. And we're not seeing as much response from either the state or the federal government as we'd like. Not exactly their fault. I think this is where the public really needs to get involved and be more engaged. They have to know, what happened, who did it. And usually people know someone, your neighbor, your uncle, your kid, whatever, somebody knows who shot an eagle, because people tend to brag about stuff like that. If you have the mentality that makes you shoot something that's a protected species, you might brag about it. but those things have to be reported. Quite frankly, there's not enough wardens around. There's not enough federal agents around. We only have 2 federal agents to our entire state, and both of them are located in Madison. So as our funding for state and federal facilities and agencies has decreased, so has that protection aspect. And it's not legal, it's still illegal, but trying to catch someone is the problem. So I'd like to encourage everybody to be part of the solution there. And if you know something, there's a tip line to call, and please say something. It's really up to everybody. These birds belong to all of us. And it's not fair to have somebody, some ill-advised person, and we're not talking about hunters here. We're talking about people with guns, and just someone who probably, probably doesn't even know what they're shooting at, or if they do, they're doing it for the wrong reason. So anyway, so be involved. I would just encourage you to do that, and then we'll be able to see more carrying out of the federal laws.
There's another question that came in. How many are currently nesting in the Chicago Skyline? Do you have an idea on that one, Marge?
Yeah, I don't. I'm more connected with the Wisconsin peregrines, and so I'm not really clear about the Chicago area. I do know that the populations are pretty well monitored. And you can probably get that information through your Audubon Society in Chicago or in Illinois. And they keep very close track of them. Most of them are banded in the nest, as Stella is or was. And so they know exactly where they're hatched. When they mate, they know, of course, where they go to. They know they have monitors on the nest cameras. And so they know there's no privacy for the peregrine, let's say that. There's no quiet place to go home to, because somebody's always watching how you're feeding the kids, what you're feeding the kids, that sort of thing. So, we think that we've got it bad, right? But anyway, so thank you. I think is that it?
I think that's it for the peregrine. I just have to take one notice. First of all, I'm amazed how large this bird is. I always thought they were so little.
Well, the males are smaller.
Okay.
Males are smaller by about 1/3.
Oh, wow.
And so the females are larger, and that is the same in most raptors. The females have to be larger because the egg is large for the size of the bird. So, but they both are excellent parents, both incubate the eggs, both feed the babies. The males tend to teach them to hunt. That is kind of the way that they split up the duty. But he does help with everything, and brings food home to mom too.
She's beautiful.
She is.
And her wing goes down so far, and when she has it tucked back, it's like right next to her tail.
Can you put your wing up, sweetheart?
Look at.
Put your wing up. You see that narrow wing of the falcon? That provides the speed. It cuts through the air, and it provides that incredible speed in their downward plunge. When they go into a stoop, which is when they're diving at prey or diving through the air, they're actually falling faster than gravity. That means they are actually swimming down. When they have slow motion cameras on them, their wings are in a swimming motion going down. So they're really remarkable birds, and the fastest animal in the world, absolutely. And when we do programs, we talk about, and children always say cheetahs. No, wrong. I mean, that's a mammal, but this young lady has seen a lot of speed in her life, and she was a adult, which means that she has been very successful, and so she was really making it had she not been taken out from the population by some ill-advised individual.
Beautiful. Well, Stella, thank you for visiting us.
Yeah, okay.
What a beautiful girl. Okay, well, Marge is going to be bringing us a different bird, and we are going to just answer any questions you have for sure on that. I have, if I can do this again a little better, we do have some neat videos for you in between of showing the location of which we're at. If you use your reactions right now, you can tell us, raise your hand if you've been to the Raptor the Raptor Center. How many people have been, you can use your video, or you can use these reactions. There's a thumbs up, or you can just say, hey, I did. And just look at how many people have visited, and also how many people have not. While we do that, I'm going to share this video.
Here, right in front of me, we have the.
The sound's a little bit light, but it's showing this Trumpeter Swan.
Here this summer.
And the swan is a surrogate for these two other young swans, meaning it's not this is not the original mother of these two young ones. Adopted mother, can you say? Foster mom.
Being very protective of the family, which is really a nice thing. You see our pelicans in the background. Those are education pelicans. All of our pelicans that came in with power line collisions have been released or placed in zoos if they weren't able to go. Having a foster parent is extremely important, no matter what species it is. They raise them as their own. There's never any problem with possession of them. And then the little ones are swans in every description. They're never fed by us or handled by us, except when they first come in for emergency needs. Mom has been with us for over 20 years. She came in lead poisoned and is one of the banded swans from the original Trumpeter. These are our foster parents.
Okay. So we'll stop there and then we're bringing in our next bird here. So if you heard that in the video, Marge was explaining the importance of having foster or surrogate adults really nurturing those young ones when they come in. It gives them the chance, instead of people kind of trying to get the birds to eat, having them be with their own species and being modeled, that gives them more success in life. So, and Marge, feel free to share more about that if you would like. I think I'm going to just keep our view on the gallery here. It seems to be.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Okay. Yes, with the foster parent program, we don't hand raise any of our babies other than passerines. We don't want them to be imprinted to humans. And that's a very important aspect. When they leave here, they have to be fully wild. They have to know what food that they need to eat. They have to have the proper vocalizations that they develop not only through their chickhood, but as they get older. So they have to be able to communicate with others of their own species. Those are very, very important things, and not something that we can teach them a lot, but we can't teach them that. So we have foster parents that do a really good job, and our eagles are all raised by foster parents. In fact, a foster dad. Dads are amazing parents and better than the females, actually. Which is kind of interesting. We don't think about that, I guess, a lot, but they're really great parents. So anyway, everybody here is raised by a foster parent. So when they go out, they're wild and they're getting ready to breed and do what they're meant to do. So this is Ivy. She is a red-tailed hawk. She's a very light, a light morph. She's not a Criders, but she's just a very light eastern red-tailed hawk. And usually when I do programs, I have different birds with different problems. So we want to try to tell people, what happens to them, our patients. And our education birds have this, the reason that they're not out is because they can't be released for one reason or another. And Ivy has a really interesting story. Are you hungry? Yeah. She's like, you hungry? Yeah. So anyway, you'll notice she also has one wing. This wing is not there at all. and it's, you know, simply missing totally. Well, when Ivy came in, she is from Shawano County, and a gentleman found her on the road, and he found something odd. He called us and said, there's a bird, a hawk, and right next to it is its wing. And, you know, we were not sure what he meant. And it was in the days before we would say, oh, send us a photo. And now we always say, send a photo, send a video, so we can tell exactly what's going on. But in fact, they put her in a box, and they put the wing in the box too, apart from her. She had a traumatic amputation because of the auto collision or truck collision, whatever it was. And her wing was absolutely severed. With a traumatic amputation, there's very little, if any, bleeding because it's a trauma, and the blood supply just shuts down. And that happens with any animal, including humans. If they lose a limb, they can have a traumatic amputation. So interestingly, Ivy never acted hurt. She got out of the box and standing on our table and just looking around like, you know, what's going on here? She didn't lose any blood. She has perfect balance. That's another problem that we want to try to intercept with wings, birds that have one wing. And she's perfect. She has perfect balance. So she passed all the tests. Normally they don't, Fish and Wildlife doesn't allow us to have one-winged birds. We didn't amputate this. She simply didn't have it when she arrived. It was next to her, and there was no blood. So Ivy, in one part, because of her coloration, she's absolutely beautiful, a big female. And she has a gorgeous tail. I don't know if you can see her tail. You're a good woman, aren't you? Yeah.
You go a little closer to that tail.
There, here, okay. Here she's got her pretty tail. Yeah, she's pretty all over.
So you say Fish and Wildlife doesn't allow you to have birds with amputees? What
We actually have to, we're under some very strict rules, which is actually a good thing. We don't want people to have something that's, you know, mutilated or that is not doing well or is in a lot of pain, or not able to you know, perch well and then maybe fall off all the time, which is balance is affected with birds with one wing. So that was, you know, part of their ruling is that they have to be able to balance. We don't want them to jump into a pan of water and fall over and drown, for instance. And that used to happen before the rules went in. And so we do have some very strict regulations that we have to follow, including, can you turn around, sweetheart? We're not done talking. She's done talking, I think. Anyway, so, but that's why. And they don't allow in an amputation to happen above a certain point of the wing. So hers wasn't an amputation, and she passed all the rules and all the goals set for her as far as her stability and sitting, you know, on fences and things. She doesn't fall off. She's completely stable. In fact, she's very solid. Where was the video filmed? Which one? Oh, the swans?
Yeah.
Oh, the swans, that's on the REGI property. We have 2 swan ponds. We do all the trumpeter swans for the state of Wisconsin, or at least most of them, and Upper Michigan as well. And so we tend to have a lot of swans at any time. And we do most of the babies, even coming over from Minnesota, because we have the foster parent program. So they're not raised as imprints. And that's a real important thing with wildlife rehabilitators and state and federal agencies as well. Okay, what? You don't know. Are you done? You done? You done? Yeah. She's like, I'm real done here.
Yeah.
Okay. Say goodbye to everybody. So anyway, it was filmed on the REGI property, and it's just one of our ponds. It's a large pond, the larger pond. The other one has tundra swan, and cranes. And we have kind of a funny video to show you with when I was trying to do a video of the swan and her cygnets when, well, you'll see, our Sandhill Crane wanted to show off. See you in a bit. What are you doing?
Okay, so let me let her switch out her birds. And while we do that, I hope I get the right one. Let's see here. I believe this is the one, right?
These are our foster parent trumpeter swans, and they reared 2 cygnets this summer. So the chicks are not theirs biologically, but they are now not imprints to human, and that would be our Sandhill Crane stepping into the picture.
Okay, so you got to see the Sandhills always are stealing the show, you know, those cranes. Okay, I believe Marge is coming with our next bird here. Any questions on the red-tailed hawks or red-tailed hawks in general, or the last bird we saw? Reminder to please use the chat for those questions. We're monitoring the chat box for that. I see Brad has his hand up. Is that just from when we were asking a question in Virginia? You can always put your hand, your reaction hand down if you don't have a question, or if you do have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask that. Virginia, I don't know if you have a question. Okay, if not, then we'll bring Marge in with our next guest. Here she is, or he.
Yeah, this is a fella. Now this is as birders, this is my special choice for tonight. This is Raymond, and he is a sharp-shinned hawk. And there are an accipiter, and more often we see the Cooper's hawks, you know, at our bird feeders and so on and so forth. But sharp shins are much smaller, the same general shape. They have, you know, that long tail, the rounded wings, and they tend to be pretty high strung. Now, Raymond came to us as a baby, and his problem was the tree that he was hatched in and his nest was sprayed with insecticide. They didn't mean to hurt the bird. They were spraying the tree for some sort of insect, but the babies were affected, and they all died except for him. So he has been affected. His cognition is less than it probably would be. And he also has, he's much more calm than we would expect a sharp-shinned hawk to be. But he's perfect in every other way. But we have to remember that these things affect them. And these are things that we as humans do. You know, we have to think about not only, you know, will this kill insects, you know, my apples or whatever that they're spraying for. And I'm not sure what type of tree it was. But he had neurologic symptoms coming in. As I say, his siblings all died. And, you know, of course, it affects the entire family. So if you poison a food supply, you're going to also poison the whole family. And we have to keep that in mind. So accipiters, he's got his handsome big boy plumage now. You see?
How old was he when he came into today?
He was a baby coming in. He's 2 now. So he's got his big boy feathers. He doesn't have red eyes. The Cooper's hawks have those beautiful red eyes, but he does have his gray color, gray adult color. Look at that long tail. That really helps them navigate through woodlands and fly just incredibly rapidly and go through really tight areas. I'll get him to open his wings. You'll see that. You don't have to open him that much. Okay, you'll see the very short wings. And again, that makes them really good at what they do. They're woodland birds, and they love woods, and they navigate it perfectly. Is there a large population of red-tailed hawks in Wisconsin? It's a healthy population for sure. The last couple of years, I guess pretty much since the pandemic, we're seeing sort of a change in our society. We're seeing more shootings, we're seeing more illegal activity, including poisonings and things. And I do worry about even stable populations if that trend continues. So right now they're stable, yes, and they've done well. It's one of our most populous hawks that we have in our state. Any other questions? Okay, that's Raymond, our little sharp shin. You can see how skinny those legs are in his shins. He's got the skinny little legs, but he's a strong little guy, aren't you? Handsome man.
Okay, so any questions on sharp shins at all? All right, I'm gonna pick another little guest that we see or that is found here at REGI, not that we, as if I'm here. This one's, I just wanted to share a cute little.
There was a question.
How much do sharp shins weigh, Marge?
It's about a little over 100 grams. Not very much.
About 100 grams. Wow, that's really,
Yeah, they're not very.
wow. Here's your cute break. Oh, he went to size himself up, huh?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oops. Whoops, I don't want to leave the meeting. Okay, we'll close that one. Okay, so.
I wanted to say about the little Sandhill crane. We do raise some Sandhill cranes here. However, they're very complicated because they grow so rapidly. They have to run about 2 miles a day each. So that's a lot of, unfortunately, too much time that someone has to spend with them. Remember, they follow the parent all day, every day. They swim, they do everything. And we have to somehow replace that for them. And that's, oh, Raymond's having a bit of a problem in the box, just a second. So anyway, so they're very complicated, and they eat mice. Young sandhills, when they're about 3 weeks old, are eating about a dozen mice a day or more. In fact, the last one that we had, they ate about 17 mice a day. So, you know, they're not eating corn, and they're not eating things that a lot of people think. So anyway, I will be right back.
Just monitoring that area. So this program was originally planned to be in Stevens Point Live, but I do, you know, we weren't able to do that because of COVID, but this, I hope you're enjoying the virtual program nonetheless. We have another one coming. All right, guess what this one is? Any wild guesses? You can use the chat again for that.
Great horned hawk or owl.
That's right, Karen. This is Bumpy. So anyway, this is my original great horned owl that I've had for almost 30 years. And his name was Bumpy, is Bumpy. He was found under a tree by some children in Polar. And he had a head injury. Often when they fall, if we can put them back in the nest, we do, or we can put them with a foster parent or wild foster them. But if they're injured, that's when, we have to do more handling. And he is a human imprint. So he is, he's not able to go into the wild because he has no idea that he's an owl. And he doesn't hoot. Bumpy had West Nile virus in 2006 when it went around. And in fact, we learned a lot from Bumpy and his virus. We worked with Marshfield Clinics and the pathologists there to develop an antigen, because our West Nile virus was different than the one on the East Coast. It mutated. We now know with the recent COVID issue that that's what viruses do. They mutate. And so that's what the West Nile did. And so it mutated into the raptors, where it used to be crows, ravens, jays. And when it got to the Midwest, it went into raptors. Great horned owls were one of them. And he was very, very sick, and he almost didn't recover. He was about 6 months, not even knowing who I was. We had to put his food on his feet for him to find it to eat. And I was just about ready to make the decision. That was difficult because he wasn't sick. He wasn't hurt, but he didn't know anything. He was afraid if we'd walk over and things like that. So it wasn't fair to him. And one day in January, just before I was thinking that, he wasn't going to recover, he looked up at me and hooted. And from then on, he started to recover. He recovered, except West Nile does some interesting things. It affects the feather follicles. And while he does molt and get all his feathers in beautifully now, they pinch off. The follicle is damaged from the virus. The virus sits in the follicles. And even though it's been many years, can you put your wings up, baby? You'll see that he has shattered follicles on this side. And so he couldn't fly in the wild because he doesn't have a full feathers. So he couldn't go in the wild anyway because he's a human imprint. But Bumpy has been with us for over 30 years, and he's still doing well. He lost his hoot about a year ago. So he has a very quiet little hoot. We do have a short video of Fonzie, our other great horned owl, that has a hoot. So any other questions? He weighs about 2 pounds. He's a kind of a small guy. He's like, yeah. They have the softest feathers of any bird, and you don't hear them flying, which is one reason that people tend to be a little afraid of them. So any questions at all? Well, how long can he be expected to live? We're finding out more and more how long they live. With captive care has become better and better, I think, throughout the years. We now try to emulate their natural food much more closely. Their housing is through Fish and Wildlife regulations and other things. Their housing is much better. We're making sure that every part of them is well cared for, whether it's their feathers or their feet or even their beaks are all managed well. So 30 years isn't that long for a great horned owl. I mean, in the wild, perhaps, but remember, he doesn't have to hunt. And even if he gets a little arthritis, it won't be a problem for him. I did have a great horned owl, Fran Hammerstrom. You're probably familiar with very famous wildlife biologist in central Wisconsin for years. Before she passed, she had a great horned owl called Porfirio. And as she got older, Porfirio came to live with me. And Porfirio was a strong personality, just like Fran herself. So we always really enjoyed that aspect of her. But Porfirio lived to be 45. and you know, just and never really decreased in her quality of life until the very end. So anyway, that's I think that that, you know, it depends on how, you know, in the wild it's different, of course, because they have to breed, they have to fight off intruders, they have to make sure that there's, you know, no territorial defense, and hunt for the babies. So there's a lot more on them when they're in the wild, of course, than when they're in captivity. So, okay, where someone said about he was showing off a minute ago with his ears. Great horns also have the asymmetrical ears, but it's not as marked as it would be from a barred owl. And I don't have a barred owl with me tonight. But they're in the head, their ears are in the skull itself, and they are asymmetrical, so they have three-dimensional hearing. That's how they can hear a mouse running. They actually have found that they mark their territories. Their territories are through sound. In other words, there's a little stream at one side of the territory, and they know where that is. But it's a lot of it's hearing. 60% of their hunting ability comes from hearing, which is different from hawks and eagles. The vision is, I mean, it's important, but they don't have the vision or the speed of flight that hawks and eagles have. So they're quiet hunters. They fly without making any sound, which makes them pretty slow in flight also. And when they're on a telephone pole or on your light standard, if you have a outdoor light on your yard, they're listening for mice. They're listening for rodents. They're big rodent hunters. And that's what they're doing as they're sitting there. That's why they rotate their head 240 degrees. You want to turn your head around? Oh, there you go. Look at what a good bird you are. What a smart owl. He's never called smart, so we're not going to get into that. But anyway, so, okay. Yes. Oh, the question, do we have screech owls in northern Wisconsin? Actually, we occasionally have them as far north as Langley County, but not often. Usually Stevens Point is kind of what we think as the northern line. And it has to do with, you know, snow, cold, length of winter, all kinds of things like that. But we see them rarely. We've developed that line from patients that come in. We rarely, I think we've only gotten one screech owl from Langley County in all these years that I've been here. And Raptor Education Group was developed in 1991. So we've been here well over 30 years. And so, you know, they really don't come up very often. Our owls apex predators, they're certainly excellent predators. And however, they are predated on as well. And so there's other animals when they're in a nest, which is when they're all vulnerable, whether it doesn't matter what species it is. When they're sitting on eggs, they tend to be vulnerable. That's when, if they're ground nesters, it's a real problem because they can be, you know, they don't want to give up on their eggs. They don't want to get their eggs cold, so they're protecting them. And therefore they could be in a situation where they can be predated on during that period of time. So especially during great horned owls, they're going to start nesting about Christmas time. If you have owls in your area, and you will hear the hoo-hoo, you know, of a great horned owl, but then you'll hear a slightly higher hoo-hoo. And toward Christmas time, they're going to get closer together. Now the calls are more like hoo-hoo, and then she will answer hoo-hoo. And so they're a distance apart. But just before breeding season, it goes hoo-hoo, 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 hoo-hoo. You're going to hear them closer together. And they are our earliest nester in this area. So, you know, around February, we start getting babies in that fallen from trees, or people are cutting trees sometimes and they don't realize there's a nest there. They don't make their own nest. They take over old nests of crows or other hawks. Look there, okay. So that's kind of the situation. They're definitely predators. They have a wide prey base. They eat snakes, they eat frogs, they eat a lot of things, and they're very strong, very strong. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm going to put him back. He's my last bird of tonight. We had a vulture, but I don't usually do programs in this room, and this is where we had to film for the Zoom. So he was very nervous about being here, so we actually took him out. But anyway, I'll be back to answer all kinds of questions for you, okay? And we have some more video, I think.
Yeah, I'll show you the video of the owl. And again, please feel free to use that chat feature for asking those questions. Oops. No, that was you. That was actually your video. Hold on just a second. Okay. Just really neat to see the vocals, how deep they're using the sound. Yeah, just really think that's amazing. I don't know what the next one is.
No.
Oh, do you want to show this one? Sure. Okay, we're going to show this one and then we'll talk a little bit more about it there.
And you're doing the blood, and you're doing the yelling and screaming and hollering, and like pretending you're a cowboy. I got news for you. You are going to have a tent, and you may get hurt because they have to fight for their life at that point. You know, you could be a wolf. I mean, because they're behaving the same. So don't act stupid around them. And if you're afraid of them, let me know. I'd rather you tell me than they tell me. Because if they tell me, that means that they're reacting to you. And it doesn't mean you all have to be wrangling eagles, you know, by the time you leave.
Have you ever wondered?
So I don't know if you were able to hear that last video all that well, but you know, quoted from Marge, "Don't be stupid around an eagle." She's talking to her some interns there,
Yeah.
so I'll let her talk
Yeah.
more about that.
Okay. We have a large intern program here at REGI, and we have an intern house that's right on the property. And we had 9 this summer, and they come from all over the country, mostly college seniors, some already graduated, and a lot international, not recently because of COVID, but we also have veterinarians from other countries that come to learn handling and care of raptors. So what you saw was me talking to the interns. I do teach a lot of handling. And one of the things that people always misunderstand is they think that they need to rush them with some great strength. And I always say, my words, if you act like a cowboy, they're going to respond, you know, they're going to be afraid. Why are you doing that? You're dealing with really intelligent birds, intelligent beings. And it's not that I do use my voice. It's not that they understand our words, but they understand the intent just as much as if, you know, you don't understand someone's language. We don't understand theirs, actually. But there's, you know, a gentle touch, or, you know, the way you say something. So there's body language that they're reading. And if they read it to the point where they trust people, and if they're injured, they often do. They often just, you know, kind of wait for someone to pick them up. And but if you come at it, you know, like you're going to rush them, you're going to overpower them, Well, don't do that, because that will make them fight. And you don't want to get in a fight with an eagle. They're stronger than we are. And, it's much better if you work with them, and it needs to be cooperative. So that's what I was trying to teach my interns on that video. I will say that when our people leave here, we have some amazing interns that end up as wildlife professionals. Some professors, some go into research, a lot go into research actually. So veterinarians as well. So it's important for them to know handling, and they don't get that in a classroom. You have to have birds, and for good or for bad, we happen to have a lot of bald eagles. We usually do about 100 a year. This year it'll be well over that. We have 33 here right now. So it's, we want people to handle them safely. When they're doing research in the field, they need to know that. And that's why, as I say, they get some really good positions, because they know handling and safe handling, which is important. Any questions about what you saw? Okay.
Is there a wildlife research center in Wisconsin? It's for first question.
Yeah, we have, there's a lot of wildlife research going on, often at the universities, and individuals who are doing research, whether it's the Central Wisconsin Kestrel Research or Gene Jacobs facility, where they do a lot of banding. So research doesn't pay well. May I just say that, if anything, unless you have a grant, and even then you're not talking about a lot of money. So there are people who are doing a lot of things, and these are heroes. They really are. They're finding out so much about wildlife and documenting it, which we do here as well, because it's important. It's important for us to get the information that we think we know about these species, but in fact, what we know is just touching the top of it. We need to be more aware of them and to learn from them, rather than to assume that we're teaching, because we can't teach that. They teach us. And it's a good relationship that way. Someone says the trees in my yard aren't very good for perching. I've thought about putting up a man-made perch. You can put up a perch. I think they really like yard light height, that sort of thing. But in fact, I think that they probably are, they perch just as well on fence posts. If you have a bird in your area, that means it's comfortable with your habitat, and they will find your bowls. So I think that sometimes, nest boxes are a little bit of a different thing, but a perch would be fine for an owl, but they should be pretty tall, and you probably won't know that they're using them unless you go out in the morning and see their whitewash, which is their droppings which they have at night, or owl pellets. Do we ever get goshawks? Oh yes, we do. Sadly, we just lost our education goshawk. She was in her 20s and was a real valuable part of our team. But goshawks are not real visible, to the public. And unfortunately, they start nesting right about the time when turkey season starts, and they nest in that same habitat. So the people who find them are hunters often. And that often doesn't end well, because goshawks, as you saw with our little Raymond, are accipiters, and they tend to be very protective of their nests. So, if a fellow has a dog with them, for instance, that also is not going to end well, because the goshawk is going to be frightened of the dog, and that to him it's a wolf. And so he will be more protective rather than just sort of, you know, having someone leave his territory and his nest alone. But they are really fascinating birds, and the habitat that they need, they don't like huge old trees, not old growth necessarily, but they're really amazing. And we really miss having our Millie that we had for many, many years. I hope at some point we can replace her with another one. How many citizen science programs? Yes, there are. We do a lot of citizen science, and not only I'm working with Tufts University, I work with Purdue on a loon project. We work with a lot of, we cooperate with a lot of universities and a lot of other facilities. So our patients, for instance, right now, the loon project, if we do an awful lot of loons here at REGI, and if they have a, you know, a fatal wing fracture or something like that, they are using the cadavers to study for windmills, study the eyes. And so there's a lot of projects going on that we cooperate with. And we, you know, are sending, you know, sometimes it's just blood. A lot of work on lead poisoning, a lot of work on a lot of different things that we can assist with because we happen to have the species and can give more intimate knowledge of them than you know, just watching them in the wild, which is a great way to see them, and I wish all of ours were. But we can see them in a different way and pick up on some of the things that yeah, aren't really apparent in the wild. Do we ever get starving hawk owls or great grays in the wintertime? We do occasionally. We don't get hawk owls. I will say that, not in this area. We haven't ever gotten one. We do get great grays and snowy owls. Right now we're starting to see a lot of starvation again, and we're not sure why. Great horns and barred owls. We think it has to do with some of the products that are put on, you know, on fields and so on and so forth that affect the mouse population or the voles, and therefore affect them. If they reach a point where they can't digest food, and that happens with a lot of additives or a lot of toxins, sometimes they're neurotoxins, often they are actually, and they, by the time, if it's just a light dose, it's like they have, you know, we don't know, vision problems, cognition issues, they're not flying as well, but they're also not eating during that period of time. So they lose weight. And at one point, then they're not able to catch food anymore. So they often come in here, and you know, we tube feed them actually. We just got some great horned owls in the other day that are very, very thin. And these are adults, so there's no reason on earth they should be thin. Youngsters, you know, they're learning how to catch food. Sometimes in the wild, you'll have one that's just not as accurate as the others. And there is, you know, mortality in youngsters is pretty high. But when the adults start coming in, then you really need to start paying attention to that. I don't have another question here, but if anybody would like to, you know, if you want to raise your hand or send another question, I do want to say that we.
Sir, can you tell us?
Oh, how did
you find to come to?
Yeah.
How did you start REGI, and
Yeah.
what's your little background? We get
Okay, my background, boy.
You wanted to skip that one, didn't you?
Definitely, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, it all happened when I was a child, and that's the truth. Actually, birdie was my first word, so my parents knew they were in a lot of trouble right away. Both of them were very conservation oriented. And my father could name every tree. I mean, I used to follow him around the woods as a little kid, and you don't talk because you're just listening. He was like an encyclopedia. My mom, both of them had a great deal of respect for nature and for all things wild. So I came by it naturally, but my focus was always things with feathers. My brother and sister had the typical, dog, cat, rabbit. I always, I didn't understand mammals, which was a problem when I had children. But anyway, so it was, like, okay. No, I'm more innately in tune to birds. So there was that, and that's really followed me through my whole entire life. I was a medical technologist and ended up marrying myself kind of out of a job. I back in the day, 50 years ago when we were married, work at the same hospital if you were married or in the same area. So I had to do something different. And so I started doing research, field research, which is really where my heart was anyway. And from that came wildlife rehabilitation, because I saw birds that were injured that went to a rehabilitation facility back at long time ago when it was more of a hobbyist sort of situation, and now it's very different. But they would release birds that weren't conditioned, that couldn't fly. And of course, having worked with them in the wild, I did a lot of years with red-shouldered hawks in the wild with transmitters and so on, barn owls and in the state of California. So I decided I would try to do it myself. And so I started a wildlife center in California and had a large center there for a lot of years. And then we moved to Wisconsin, which is where I'm from, and developed REGI. And the name was supposed to be educational. I wanted to write kids' books and to do things like that. And that's still waiting. But hopefully, I'll be able to get that done too. We just had, it's grown way beyond where I had any idea before. But the need was here. We needed a place that could exercise and fly bald eagles. And, that story, if you build it, they will come. And, right now with 33 eagles, we're a little heavy on eagles, but we do a lot of the large species as well. But I also have a hummingbird in my clinic right now that is going to need a trip down south soon. So, we anything in feathers that's native, we care for.
We'll take one last question. I know we're a little over time, but if you need to go, it's okay. But one last question.
My favorite type of bird, it's the one I'm holding. I mean, literally, I don't have a favorite. Every one of them is so amazing and really has such qualities of their own that they're all just miracles in feathers. And you can tell I'm pretty smitten with birds, but it's true. They're pretty amazing. And, whether, it's a starling, which, are not native here, but I do happen to have one in my house. We were trying to get a video of him talking. He does talk a lot. If you're on my Facebook, you've seen it. And clearly, unfortunately or fortunately, but depends on who taught him those things. I do have interns. I just want to point that out. Anyway, so, they're all really special. There's, all have something different from everyone else. So, yeah, they're all my favorite. It's kind of like, who's your favorite child? The feathered one.
What are the eagles coming in for? Okay, one last question and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, so because I think this is really important when I was talking to Marge earlier.
What are the eagles coming in for? This year, and I alluded to that a little bit ago, this year we're seeing more difficult things. We're seeing people that are angry, and I can't describe it in any other way. We deal with people a lot. Sometimes when my interns come, they'll say, oh, you know, I chose wildlife because I don't want to deal with people. And I have to tell them that, you know, every time that phone rings, there's a people on the other side. You know, you have to learn how to handle them. You have to realize that they're not in a good place. They have they're faced with a difficult situation and unusual, something they've never dealt with before. So they're going to be a little excitable. They're going to, and you have to deal with that. However, we're seeing more abuse these days. And really horrible things. We're seeing so many shootings, unbelievable things, loons, trumpeter swans, egrets. I mean, you know, you name it, they're not a hunted species. They're anything in feathers, and you know, in small birds, warblers. If they can shoot at it, they will, and I don't know how to fix that. I wish I did. I do think, though, when we were talking earlier, I was talking with Susan, I think that one of the messages that if I wanted to empower you all to do something is to try to be involved with, if you see illegal activity happening, or if you hear people, you know, repeating phrases that are, you know, the eagle carries away the child or something, you know, completely crazy. Correct it, because there's a lot of people out there with, I mean, you know, faulty ideas about a lot of subjects, but the one that's near and dear to my heart, of course, is wildlife. And if they're afraid of something, they're going to destroy it. So we try to replace fear with understanding or creating a greater awareness. And as birders, or as people with the Audubon background, I think that it really is important for you to be part of that solution too, and to speak up. We can do only so much, and they expect that, you know, we would do that. But your neighbors, you know, you have something to say. And they should listen to you. So please speak up if you see something going wrong that shouldn't be done. Okay.
I think that's a wonderful message to sort of end on here too. I want to thank everyone for being here with the program and being able to shift like we have done so much with COVID. Again, we're shifting a live program like this to a virtual, and I really hope you enjoyed it. You can help REGI by going to their website. They do accept donations all the time. They would really appreciate that. And also just like them on Facebook, share their stories. It's another way to build awareness about these animals. I love following REGI and hearing I mean, sometimes those stories are so hard to hear, but the more we spread the word about in the awareness of that, that really can help too. So thank you all so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it, and have a good evening.
Thank you, guys, and come see us. We have tours in the summer. Come visit. It's very different than seeing me on the screen. Good night. Have a good evening.
Good night.